Close Racing Supply in Eldred, Pennsylvania has been in business since 1996, serving the motorsports industry with quality parts for dirt late models, modifieds, and stock clip race cars. In stock are parts from top manufacturers like All-Star Performance, Weir's Machine, Sweet Manufacturing, Winner's Performance, Willwood Brakes, and many others. CRS is also home of CRS Race Components, providing top-quality suspension parts. Orders are shipped out daily using UPS, FedEx, and truck freight. Find out more at closeracingsupply.com.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Woah Show. This is actually episode 28, and I only know that because I just looked it up. And for the first time in 28 episodes, we've had announcers, track promoters, various levels of fenders on cars, but never a sprint car driver. And maybe our guest today will be able to sell me on sprint cars. They might be, lower down the chain, if you will, for me and my favorites, classic cars. But we still dig them. From Bolivar, New York. He's a local guy. Didn't know we had even sprint cars in my hometown area. I'm no longer out that way anymore. But welcome to the show, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to this. I've been watching you for a long time, and you're doing a lot for the local area. It's good.
Well, man, let's talk about it. You're kind of in late model country with a sprint car. What kind of decisions does it make, Bolivar being in the heart of, you're in the Bradford, Woodhull, Freedom area, probably the closest tracks to you. A couple go-kart tracks, don't think you're going to be running your sprint car there. What kind of comes into the decisions to run sprint cars and have to do all that traveling? You don't really have a home field advantage when it comes to running sprints.
No, nowhere. We do a ton of traveling. No, it all starts from when I was young. My grandpa, he owned the Patriot Sprint Tour. CRSA 305 Tour I run with his son. So I grew up around the 360s. I was 6, 7, 8 years old on the track with them. It's the only thing I've known.
Yeah, and this year it looks like your schedule, you're going everywhere, and that's super cool. I like guys that travel and experience a lot of stuff. What kind of traveling have you done, in the past before we start talking about your upcoming schedule?
Traveling's all I've ever really done. I grew up 14, I started running sprint cars. Just started running with the Patriots. So we were someone new every week. It's the only type of racing I've really known. I did a little bit of local racing back in the day with karts, but even with those, we traveled a lot. I'm a big believer in you got to travel and race against different guys, see different tracks, different situations to get better.
So it says here, 2025, 50 nights, 51 races, 19 tracks. You're putting an absolute crazy amount of miles on the rig. What kind of things are you excited to see this year in your schedule?
Big paying races. There's lots of them finally for 305s. It's really starting to grow. We've got, I think, 3 races that pay over 10 grand to win, which is huge. And again, it's really the competition. You get big races like that, you get all the best guys from all over. Like, we're headed out to the Midwest 3 times. So those are guys I've never raced with. Get to see their tendencies and how aggressive they are. And I live for that stuff, man. I love traveling.
So, speaking of being a lot of your schedules in the New York and PA area, but, New York, not necessarily known as a sprint car area. We have tours. We have what Land of Legends runs them weekly, right? Canandaigua, they run them weekly, but really to find like a weekly sprint car track, it's not up here. It's big blacks, it's late models, it's all this. So what's kind of, do you experience the culture about, when you guys come to a racetrack, you're kind of bringing something totally different than a lot of these guys actually see, on a weekly basis? Generally,
nobody likes us. Other teams wise, the Fender guys, they don't really like when we show up. They think we're hard at the racetrack. It's neither who there. Fans are always excited and the stands are packed when we show up to these places. So I think that's what matters. These racetracks got to make a little bit of money to give us places to race.
Yeah. I find that, you guys bring a different crowd too, to a lot of these places, being kind of a part of the Stateline crew for a little while now, when the All-Stars come to town. I know that's not 305 racing, but, The All-Stars came to town. It was asshole to elbow every time we came through.
Yeah.
It was super cool. I know the All-Stars didn't even really have. I know it was the Tony Stewart All-Stars, and that's what people associated it with. But man, it didn't matter who was there. Most of the guys didn't know who was running the All-Stars that year. They're just like, hey, we get a chance to see some 410 sprints on home soil. Super cool. So, traveling around though, what kind of New York tracks? Because, I feel like a lot of the tracks upstate, you come this way, they're kind of maybe configured, for good racing, whether it be on the late model side or the big block side. What kind of challenges does it take? Because none of these racetracks are kind of built with sprint cars in mind, because they are kind of, not to say a novelty, but when they come to town, they're not the thing that they're thinking about.
Yeah, we'll go two parts here. So the first part is New York sprint car scene is actually way bigger than it gets recognized for. Our 360 scene for years has been phenomenal. I'd put our top guys up against anybody in the country, and they would do really. We get overshadowed by the big blocks in Central New York, late models out here in Western New York. Is what it is. But our scene is pretty big. As far as racetracks, they're all gut slick, which can make for some good racing. So if they give us 2 lanes, we'll put on a show. If we can get up there and pound a cushion or catfish it around the bottom, we'll put on a good show. There's a lot of different stuff in New York, man. You get to like a place like Weedsport where it's super technical and slick. I struggle there, but it is what it is. You get to a place like Brewerton where you can either shut the car off to run the bottom or absolutely pound it on the top. You get a lot of 2-wide racing. I think I started 6th at Brewerton this year, dropped to 12th in like 4 laps. So I was just ridiculously tight and wasn't good. Pulled it out of my butt and started running the car the right way. We drove back up to 2nd. So you can do a lot of passing in New York because it's so slick.
I'll say that you travel to a lot of tracks that I don't get to see in New York, because mainly I've been following the late model deal forever and ever. But, when I do get to come out and see a CRSA show or whatever 305 sprints that might wander through, I know there's a couple battling tours, in this part of, or my part in New York, kind of battling for territory, which is also another thing we can talk about eventually. Some of these places, the big block tracks, as I look at it, what is it like in a 305 or at Outlaw Speedway? Man, that thing's like a huge track compared to some of these other, Weedsport's really tight, technical. I've been there. I haven't been to like places like Fonda or Fulton. That's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but what's it like, on these bigger tracks for not the smaller motors, but how does that work out for you?
They're fun. Wide open, man. I grew up on all them racetracks you were just talking about. Dundee, for example. When Dundee's right, that place is one of the nicest racetracks I've ever been. When it holds just a little bit of moisture to it, it's hammer down, wide open, 2 lanes. It's a lot of fun.
That is it's one of my favorite places to visit. And notably, I wasn't like the biggest fan of big blocks until I finally started coming there more regularly back when I lived out that way. And I'll tell you, man, that place, especially where you're saying when that place is right, I've seen some super, super good racing. It's awesome. I hope I can get back out there. Super busy this year. Hopefully we can go see that place again.
You got to get there for a 4K to win show.
Well,
that'll be a good
is
one.
that the CRSA show?
Yeah.
Well, I know that Marty, your guys is the CRSA announcer and media guy. He is always trying to get me to come travel out with you guys. I was able to come out for the Genesee show this last year. It's always good working for Marty. It's super cool to be, at least in the conversation, even though I'm not a sprint car guy, so I'm just standing there like, I don't know what's going on.
Marty's great. We'll get you to come out and shoot something for me this year. That'd be a good one for us. We're real good at Dundee. We should have won one this year. Last year.
It's funny that so I think it was Jared Zimbardi won the last sprint car show that I was actually at Outlaw for. I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And it was super cool because, again, all 3 sprint car guys that are in our local area, you the Juice, Nolan Groves. I'm gonna, in an hour radius of my real hometown. I think that's about it. Have you seen sprint cars maybe start growing a little bit in this area? I mean, other than the popularity is always been there, even though I know that we're in late model and big block territory. It's one of those things, right? Like Freedom Motorsports Park, when they have the Empire Sprints or they had the 305s and stuff. People you say sprint cars, right? It's down here again, not saying novelty, but it's something so different that we don't get a lot of the time. They're just like, that's a night circled on the calendar. But on the driver's side, have you seen it grow, the interest? Because I feel like you might be the guy that they would be knocking down the door to be like, hey, how do I get started in this?
Not really. Back in the day, we used to have a couple more. Chris Shuttleworth out of Wellsville, Steve Collins out of Belmont. That was really the heyday. You go a little bit north, there's a couple guys up that way, like Dansville area, but not so much anymore. A few of them guys got out. Racing around here is kind of toned down, I think, in general, which is...
It is. We're kind of going through a period right now. And you kind of you hit the nail on the head. It might be the economy. It might also be, and this is something that, I've noticed from when I grew up versus now, and I had a long period in between where I wasn't, around racing. I either fell out of love with it, I wasn't coming, whatever. Back in the day, it felt like racing was so much bigger at a local and regional level. And, maybe this is a conversation to have on a bigger scale, because at the national level, it's bonkers, right? You have, I think it's bigger than it's ever been, but at a regional local level, we're kind of struggling to make it like why you should come out and see. I'm not saying the Empire Sprints or the CRSA or what have you isn't like the draw, but that being kind of part of our weekly and regional program, we're struggling, I believe, at that level to make, whether it be your guys' sprint tour or even just the weekly program, feel huge. I felt like when I was sitting in the stands at Little Valley back in the day when I was just a young chap, even the guys that were finishing 20th felt like a big deal. Like now it feels like trying to get some kids interested in stuff. How do we make local racing cool again? And I might have some ideas, a little bit, but on the flip side of that, I don't know what you've seen since you've started racing, if that might be the case.
That's $1 million question. How do we make local racing cool again? Because there is a huge divide between the national guys and the local scene now. It's not more than ever. Especially with the sprint car side of things, the high limit outlaw split has really made that bigger. Now you went from having 12 to 15 national teams to having 30. And they spend so much more money than your local and regional guys can, engines, everything. That competition divide is bigger. So now, why do I go show up to run 22nd at a limit race? I'm not going to. It's tough. And even you take that down a step to your regional level. I know with us, when we go run with ESS, especially back in the day running the 360 stuff, we were just way outfunded. And we're getting our butts kicked. So we're down 100 horsepower. Well, now we're getting a little better. It's all money. It's all money, man. It's between the racetracks having to make money, and they're not making money on our local shows, which is not good. As you know, we're losing racetracks. We're not building them. So that's what needs to change, and that'll only change with the local scene coming in. And we're not creating local stars anymore. That's why this is so important. This social media stuff, this is a huge part of it.
I think saying that the creating local stars thing is a great kind of conversation, and this is something that I've kind of, I've kind of strived for, right? Everybody knows the guys that run in the top 3, top 5, and those guys are always really good to bring on the podcast. But guys that no one's heard of, if I say Tyler Graves, no offense, but they're like, who's that? And I'm like, he's a sprint car driver, and they're like, that's cool. How do we do that? And I think right now we are experiencing something cool, right? Because I find that in me trying to figure out what's going on here, I find that gap that I took off, right, which is really funny because, I might have taken a 10-year gap, let's say, or something. I got back into it, end of my high school, era when I started paying attention, and it was the same guys. Like, it was the same super late model guys that were still around when I was a kid. Those are still the big names, still same guys. But we're starting to have this youth movement. And last week's podcast, we had Cassidy, and I'm gonna butcher the last name because I'm awful with names, but Cassidy Comaker, who just won the PPMS Rush Late Model Track Championship. And she's the first female to do so in a late model at PPMS, first female in a Rush Late Model to win a championship. And, we were talking about that is, on autograph night, she had this long line of kids and come up and, get autographs. She said she ran out of time and wasn't able to do that. And I mean, I think this youth movement is going to be key to creating those stars of the next year, or the next generation, right? To make racing cool again. There's a ton of kids coming from karts into the big car scene, whether it be, sprint cars or, late models or stock cars or what have you. It's really, really cool. And I know that now you're starting to become you're kind of looking like a veteran now to all these young kids that are coming in. How many younger people have you seen started coming into the sport? Maybe not at the 305 wing level, but I know the Rush sprint car stuff, the wingless stuff, is starting to take off a little bit.
Yeah, there's some younger guys with the Rush deal. It's been a while since I've been involved, a couple of years, but I just got off phone with a guy tonight looking to come buy my Rush car who's got a 15-year-old son. They're running it, so it's good to see. There's a couple guys upstate New York that are in that teenage year range, and that's awesome. We need that. Biggest thing we need is younger kids in karting. I know out here, karting's gone downhill a lot since I was in. See, that seems like with the state too, and that's where it starts, man. Karting generally.
I think it's understated where go-karts really lead, and we're gonna shout out Caden Bush here, who did the research for the Stateline kart track and said about 30 people that race at the big track came from that kart track, right? And not every racetrack's going to have a go-kart track in their backyard to be able to have this feeder system, but maybe we're just going through a period where a whole bunch of people either moved up or moved out of karts, and we're going to see it slowly come back. But it's super good. That's kind of like when people start talking to me about how to get their kids into racing or how's that all work. One, I'm not a race car driver. I don't know what the hell's going on. But when they ask me, my biggest thing is get him into karts. There's so many people and there's so much talent gained there. You said you started in karts, right?
Yep, started in karts when I was 9.
How much of that translates? Maybe not translates as driving style, because you're not going to push to pass in a sprint car. That seems awful, right? But, maybe the work ethic, or, maybe not inside the kart, but the outside of the kart. What is kind of the biggest things you learned coming from karts?
I mean, all your fundamentals of racing, obviously, that you're learning at that age. I think you start at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. You don't know what a green flag is, white flag, yellow flag, how to line up on a restart, how to get a good restart. A lot of those basic fundamentals definitely come from karts. And like you said, the work ethic of take it to karting, cleaning your tires. You might not do everything. Your dad might do it, but at least he's making you clean your tires, take care of your helmet, those sort of things. It's huge.
Hi everybody, Woah, Nellie from the future here to do glorious ad reads for our lovely 2025 sponsors. And I'm sure this list will grow, however it is early, and we want to make sure we sponsor those who have hopped on early. Close Racing Supply has been a partner of ours since the very beginning. We've been doing the whole, Woah Nellie sponsorship program. It's getting close to race season, guys. Make sure you visit Close Racing Supply for, the leading products in the industry and their own. Close Racing Supply does it all. I always say if they don't do it, you don't need it. So make sure you go visit our friends at Close Racing Supply. You don't even have to go in person. They ship nationwide, and it's always kind of crazy to me that we see these guys all over the place on different race cars. We travel a lot for the photo deal, And it's always just real amazing how far those products go. So make sure you are getting to Close Racing Supply today. Your podcast presenting sponsor is a new sponsor for us in 2025. Burnin Hollow Sauce Company is out of Buffalo, where they mix flavor and heat. It's a great balance. They are good buddies, or Brian is a good buddy of mine who runs that deal. You can order online at Burnin Hollow, no G, burninhollow.com. They are our presenting sponsor for qualifying the Burnin Hollow Hot Sauce Scorcher Award. Whoever does the quick time of the night will be given a nice award from Burnin Hollow. I wasn't a hot sauce guy when it came down to it, but I tried this stuff this past year, and I was like, man, we got to promote this stuff. It is some of the best sauce you can get. I believe there's a wide variety of heat tolerances that we can that you can choose from. I really like the I really like the milder side. As I said, I'm not a very spice guy. However, I'm a very big fan of the Blood of Heroes and Sting of the Ancients. That's their medium and hot. They also have, and they all come with all these cool names. Their mild sauce is Awaken the Dead. The Deep Inferno is their super hot, and their extra hot is Arkham Madness. So, make sure you visit those guys today. I could ramble all day about how great they are and how good. I put that stuff on everything. Man, I was putting it on pizza bagels the other day, just to show you, that it's a very wide variety of uses for the sauce. And also, they made this shirt. They made this hat that I'm wearing, the Caden Bush 3B hat. Good friends of ours. Back again for 2025. Back again as a Woah Nellie modified sponsor, podcast sponsor, driver of the week. Just like we said for Close Racing Supply, if they don't do it, you don't need it, man. They got, when they drop their energy drinks. I'm telling you, one of the best energy drinks that you can get. From their hats, their t-shirts, their wraps, the quality. And I know we had them on the show very early on for the Woah show. The quality and the creativity between all these designs is amazing. These shirts hold up super well. I beat the ever-living shit out of my stuff. And I mean, dirt tracks ain't too friendly to most of your guys' clothes. So make sure you stop in, see what Carpy can do to you, or do for you. And, tell them that we sent you. They love that stuff, So, man, let's get back to the show. So we're gonna transition into the ending segment here, the Fast 5 questions, and seems to be working out. I was kind of like I didn't know how to end our podcast, so we've been doing this. Sometimes I have to alter it when I have these young kids on our podcast, because the last question, which we'll get to, I'm like, well, you can't really ask a 17-year-old what they would bring back to racing when they've only been doing it for like 7 years. So, but let's get started here. Fast 5 questions. Who is your favorite race car driver ever, and why?
It's got to be my grandpa. Obviously, I mean, that's what I grew up in. His shop. I was 3 weeks old. For sure, it's my whole life. It's him. Outside of him, you want to go to like a national level guy, it'd be a Logan Schumacher. Just love how they came from nothing and they built a really good program.
What is your favorite racetrack?
New answer this year, Bridgeport. We went out there in June. That place is sprint car.
We talked about it. Hopefully, for this media deal, I'm trying to be down there for the Rush stuff. It'll be my first trip to, hopefully, knock on wood. I've been rained out 2 trips to Bridgeport, once as a photographer and once as a fan, and super excited to get there. I've only seen it on Flow Racing. It's crazy.
It's just as good in person. It's 5 wide and fast as can be.
So, favorite moment as a driver?
Winning my first sprint car race. That'll be tough to beat. I was 14 years old, won that at Knox. That was really cool.
Knox is such a badass racetrack, and everybody says you always remember your first one, right? But man, Knox to me is a super special racetrack to me because it reminds me of everything that I like about racing. I mean, when I can go to a racetrack, and I'm sorry, Kevin Thomas, when I can go to a racetrack and you make me like sprint car racing there, because sometimes I just get a little whatever about sprint cars, But when you get me kind of like on my toes, excited about like the, how man it races good. If you've never seen, Jets in the Gymnasium, as everybody calls it, my goodness, man, I can't wait to go back there.
That place
Hopefully,
is
we get there.
Yeah, it's nice to see them come back and start building something again. I mean, when I won that race, I was barely as tall as the kids that were in Victory Lane with me. So I love that place. I always.
It's kind of reminds me, I tell everybody, it reminds me of Bradford without an outside wall, right? And I hope this year they get a fair shake at it. I think last year, maybe, or the last time they ran, maybe some things kind of went wrong. I had some, like I said, I get excited about going to a place like Knox, and I hope more people give it a shot. They're running Sunday specials, but man, three classes, I think at most all year. You're done by 9:30. Sometimes the sun's not even setting. I mean, what's better than that on a Sunday night when you can be home in bed at a good time? Maybe not for you because it's like a 3-hour drive through the mountains or whatever, however you guys get there. But
It's pretty close for me. It's an hour and a half. It's real close for me. You made a good point right there, though. Getting home by 9. That's one of the biggest problems our local scene has. Is we run too many classes, program drags on, so you don't get fans. They've got to run that many classes to pay it in the back gate. So it's screwed if you do, screwed if you don't.
Yep. And that's definitely something that I think like on a Saturday night track, maybe a little bit more leniency about, how many how many classes. I can name a couple of race tracks that it's absolutely bad shit insane how many classes. Like I look at they're like, oh, we're running this week and they got 9 classes, and I'm like, I don't even know 5 of these. Like what's going on here?
3 divisions of modifieds.
3 divisions of mini stocks.
It just gets dragged out. Waters down the competition too. So people are there and want to watch a good race. You've got 8 in this modified class, 9 in that, and 13 in that one. Make it one class,
Yeah. Back in the day, there was offshoots of late models, but there was late models, and I'm sure limited late models. Someone can correct me, but there was like a beginner class, and then there was just late models, right? They're running B mains weekly for a weekly show, and how we've kind of progressed in our era with how many different classes there are in every division. Maybe we can kind of learn about some old school thinking there. So, and you know what? This one's going to be a layup. You come from a racing family, but what made you a fan of racing? Like the one moment where you're like, I've got to do this.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, my first race was 3 weeks. It's literally all I've ever known. It's all I've ever wanted to do. I grew up making PowerPoints in library class at school of the Patriot race that I was at that weekend. That's the only thing I've ever.
Well, that's the generic family and racing answer. As I feel like every time I interview somebody within family, they're like, I didn't have a choice. I didn't get to pick this, and that's super cool too, it being a family thing. And I got one more for you. What's one thing you would bring back to racing? It can be a class, it can be a way we do things, anything. I've had a ton of different answers for this.
Cheaper tires, parts. That's a huge problem. That's why we don't have B mains in every class. And people can't afford it. I mean, it's brutal.
I will say that is, not to get controversial here, but the tire deal is kind of getting crazy. And there's a lot of, kind of lockdown deals, with different series and different tires. And, not to get into the weeds on things, in my personal opinions, I believe that there is a there's a reason for that, right? There's a reason for that, and not to call anybody out on about what that reason is, but
someone's getting a check.
Someone might be getting a check. I would like to also say that there's one tire that is significantly better, and I hope that in the future we can maybe start pushing back towards more of an open tire. What are the kind of tire rules you guys run on the fives? I don't think I've ever even known.
There's a couple different ones. Seems like every series nowadays has a plated right rear tire. Our right rear is generally the only tire that is mandated. Everything else is just open Hoosier, which is nice. But it's the plated deal, man. Like someone like me, I'll run with 6 or 7 different series this year. I think it's 3 different tires that I have to have. That gets expensive just for that. I think we should all be on a tire. Open tires is a whole nother conversation too. That gets expensive for that reason. If you've got 3 compounds, now you have to have all 3. So you don't know what the racetrack's going to be at that night, especially if you're a traveling guy. It's a little different local scene because you know you're a racetrack most of the time it works. Like these karting guys, they love open tires. They run one racetrack because they have the tires for that racetrack. I know, you got a Burris down here at AMS, Vegas at Stateline. Vegas the better tire here, but there's a lot of racetracks that Burris is the better tire. Then you get into Burris where your 11s, 22s, 30s. Now you've got 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 sets of tires. When if everyone was on one, might be a little pricier because of that monopoly, but now you only need 2 sets. So it goes both ways.
I think there's an argument for both sides. You know, I'm a firm believer in open tire. On the karting side, that's what I mean. Not at Stateline. I do know that they're a Vega track, but they do have open tire down here at Pittsfield. I found the race that we promoted was phenomenal there. And I think it has to do with guys. You know, I know that a lot of the guys that showed up were like, oh, well, we're going to try like 15 times the tires during the year, knowing, you know, what we're going to get ourselves into. But, you know, there's a conversation for either way. And, you know, maybe from a competition aspect too. I mean, we could talk all day about tires. I know my age old joke is like there are 3 things in life that are 3 things in life that are guarantees: death, taxes, and people bitching about tire rules. And that seems to be, since I got into racing, like one of the biggest things. And it's nothing against all my drivers. Everybody has 100 opinions about 100 different things. It's just, you know, it's like the age-old discussion. You know, I think that's probably been the discussion since forever now, the way things are. But hey, actually, I got 2 more things for you. One, give me your elevator pitch why people should start coming to more sprint car races around your area.
You just got to watch one. That'll sell you on it. You get to one, you'll be sold. They're just badass.
They are cool. I'll say it. They're cool. Nolan Groves, clip that. Keep that. He's the only person I've ever only a sprint car we've actually put the Woah Nellie logo on, and I said that he's the only exception. He's the only one that's allowed with a wing on top. But all right, hey, before we get out of here, thank everybody that made it happen.
Big list. Starts with my dad. Wouldn't be possible without him and TLC Painting, Hammer Down Apparel, Root Trucking and Logging, Westward Painting Company, Mike M. Motorsports, Dan Demery Fruit Farms. It's a bunch of people, and you got a bunch of product guys, you know, X1 Racecars, 87 speed, 87 tie, 87 suspension. It takes an army to make these things go around.
All right, Tyler, thanks for joining us. We'll definitely be seeing you around. I've been kind of peeking at your schedule since we started talking about doing this, and I like to check up on the guys that we have on the podcast, especially, you know, when they are, I'm not saying like out of our sphere of racing, like the stuff that I usually do, but all the people that are outside of that. I'd like to make sure we keep an eye on you, make sure you're doing good. Can't wait to see you at a race, and good luck this season.
Yeah, man, we'll definitely get you one. This crossover needs to happen more with us wing guys and new fender guys. We are all in this together at the end of the day. We need to make racing great again and put the rivalry down until we get everything better.
I will say, I have come around to it. When I was a fan, just so we know where this comes from, and I'll say this on the podcast. A diehard late model guy. When I was growing up, I was super late models till I die. Slow ride David Scott, my homeboy. And when I first got back into, doing racing stuff, first real race that really got me interested, I'll say it, David Scott winning at Bradford in a super late model, going on. And then, my first sprint car race that I really took note of, where I started going, okay. So when I went to Port Royal for the first time, my buddy that drugged me down there the first time, my buddy Andrew, he's like, listen, the late models are going to put on a great show. He's like, this is the only place I really enjoy sprint cars. And then I watched them, and I'm like, okay, maybe we got to give these guys a chance. And then, working with Marty for CRSA, I try to keep up with them, It's I'm coming around, and I can't wait to see more. I can't wait to see more racing classes through the region and start opening these borders.
Our racetracks are starting to come around too. They're starting to give us some good racetracks when we show up, and it's making the product so much better. Everything needs to be cool. That's the biggest thing. You gotta get the sport better, and then everybody's happy.
It'll be good. Hopefully, knock on wood. We'll get her there. I think for everybody to succeed, the big three classes need to succeed: sprints, big blocks, and late model. We all got to be healthy, and everybody got to be happy. So, but all right, Tyler, thanks for coming on the show. We'll see you around, and hopefully it's sooner than later.
Of course, thanks for having me.
In the heat of the game, every drop counts. Introducing Victory Fuel Flavored Electrolyte Water, the ultimate hydration companion.
Silly Bowl champion Logan Seavey, ASCS National Champion Seth Bergman.
Packed with essential electrolytes and bursting with delicious flavor, Victory Fuel keeps you hydrated and fueled to perform at your best. Nothing tastes better than Victory.